to Elation Communications interview with Susanna Trate. We're excited to begin to feature communication experts that we've met along the way. And we invite you to learn more about Elation Communications at www.elationcommunications.com. Today, we will be featuring a topic on communications and education. And this will be a part of our new and forthcoming blog called the Breakthrough Blog. And so you can find that at elations.com/blog. So we're excited to launch that in April. Come check us out. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Susanna Trate. How are you doing today, Susanna?
I am doing wonderful, and I have to comment that you look fabulous as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we're recording in the end of March, and this is Women's History Month. And so we're really excited to be featuring powerful women such as yourself. So Susanna, I'm really excited to share with everyone. I've been in connection and working with Susanna for over 15 years. We met while I was working in an organization where I managed a lot of the print production. And ever since, we've stayed connected and stayed friends. And so I'm very glad to have her here to share her years of experience and so many things. And today we'll be talking about, again, her experience in communication and education. So why don't you tell us more about yourself, Susanna?
Absolutely. And you know what? This is a little impromptu. I don't know if you can see behind my shoulder. Can you see?
I can see that. Mm-hmm.
Can you see the Rosie the Riveter? I don't know. So I forgot that it's Women's History Month. So
oh, look at that. We can do it. I love it. Yes.
So we can do it. And we did it. So that is my grandmother. She is almost 102 years old. I was not going to touch on this with my personal history, but I have a Rosie the Riveter grandmother who I have her picture here at my desk. She's obviously behind me. She's definitely a driving inspiration for me that, women lean in and we do hard things all the time. So with that said,
well, kudos to Grandmom. Thanks for sharing her story. And 102 years old is amazing.
So a little background about myself. I graduated from Elizabethtown College with an international business degree. I focused in marketing and, my passion for other cultures and languages and diversity made me and sort of fueled me to minor in Spanish and then study abroad in Spain. I had an internship in the UK. And then after graduating college, I embarked my career in a leadership development program with a marketing communications company. They basically focused on print, some digital formats as well. After 20 years in that industry, I held various positions and I've sort of always gravitated towards business development. So, I'll be the first to shout from the hills that sales and business development have really allowed me the flexibility to juggle motherhood on top of having my career. It's just allowed me to schedule my days and take on other commitments like coaching baseball or joining the PTA board at my son's school. Jerica, I actually have a question for you, if you don't mind me asking you a question.
Okay.
Have you read any of Laura Vanderkam's books on time management?
Not yet, but I'm writing it down. I'm gonna have to add that to I have a pile of books I'm reading this year, so I'm gonna have to add that to the list.
Yeah, add it to the stack. I'm curious if any of your listeners have read any of her books. Drop a comment below. I think I asked you earlier, will this be interactive at all? Drop a comment if anything has resonated from her book for you all. But for me, reading her materials have really allowed me to sort of focus on maximizing my days, learning to prioritize appropriately. She calls them split shifts. It's helping me realize time is elastic. It's going to stretch to accommodate what you choose to put in it. And I personally chose to prioritize my son's social and educational development by really leaning into the school and the PTA. So I know, Jerica, you really want to focus on education and communications today. I know my background is mainly communications, but I have leaned in lately and have some insight into the educational system.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. You have a rich background and just love the point that you made, particularly for us women leaders. We have so many responsibilities. We pulled in different ways, and time management is key to being effective. So thanks for sharing that tool. And as Susanna stated, put a comment in the chat to let us know if there's any materials or anything that's resonating so far in this conversation. So let's jump into it, Susanna. Share with us, why do you think communication and education is important?
Stepping into the role as a marketing director of the PTA, I really had to step back and think about who my audience was and how was I going to message and speak to them. My background is B2B. I am used to working with major corporations, and moving into this parent role and into the PTA, I was communicating obviously with staff and admin, but the caregivers, the parents, and the kindergarten through fifth grade students, their eyes are always watching. So I feel like communication at the elementary education level is everything. You think about it, it's the starting blocks for these young, impressionable minds. It's the school's introduction to forming the partnerships with these families, in a community. And, the goal obviously is to grow together for years to come, until those kids graduate high school and beyond. It's so key to start off on the right foot. That's from a parental and almost looking at it from a school side about how important communication is in education.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, children, they learn from the adults. And so we even model how to communicate in the school system as they're learning, just as much as they're learning the subject matters, right? And so I think this conversation is important to develop young people into effective communicators. So thank you for highlighting that. So you've shared in your background, there are a variety of things that you've done, particularly in print production and media. And now you are very active with your son's educational journey and has been on the board and in the PTA. And so share with us, how do you think the evolution of print production and media impacts communication and education?
It's interesting. As a parent living through COVID, I really got to experience firsthand how communication pivoted. Having a kindergartner doing virtual classrooms during COVID was, fascinating to see and experience. And also some of these gray hairs that are here, have come from that experience. It's funny, even though, the pivot happened to virtual and a lot of facets went digital, there's still a gravitation toward print and paper and touching, and everyone likes to be communicated to differently. We started off the school year getting our spelling words, our weekly spelling words for the spelling test, printed out. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, he turned it's on the Google Classroom. Well, we got into such a routine of all right, on Friday mornings, the day of the test, you review the spelling words. And then on the drive into school, I would have to test with me as I'm driving him into school and quizzing him last minute on the spelling words. Well, now it's in the Google Classroom, so we got to adjust, and it's ever changing. I think you find obviously what works for you. I think at least our school has done a tremendous job in providing various formats so that you can find what works for you. They've got emails, they have text messages where you can get alerts and information. You can get phone calls, so you can get live phone calls. They obviously have their social media, Facebook and Instagram. They recently launched a mobile app, which has been phenomenal. It's got a live feed, so you can always pop on and kind of see the latest and the greatest that's happening in the district. So it can be overwhelming, but again, you find what works for you and you register and you get those formats of communication so that you receive them how you want them and when you want them. And it works.
Well, thanks, Susanna. You've raised some critical points about communication being adaptive and tailored to the audience. And then the use of technology, which is every day evolving. And so who would have thought that kids in school are actually having these experiences with communication? But you raised, some really good points. And this is really their early years of being introduced to what the real world is like and, in businesses and as they go into other areas of life. And so while all the utilization of the variety of communications are necessary, it can be overwhelming, and the discipline of kind of honing in on what resonates with you as the receiver then, becomes more important and meaningful to how you connect, right, into the system. And so, but I think that, I never really thought about, kids having these kinds of experiences. And how old is your son?
So he just turned 10. He's now in fourth grade. But Jericho, think back when you were in kindergarten. I mean, it was just 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So think back to kindergarten and think about trying to use a laptop and navigating either with a mouse pad or a mouse and clicking and trying to use a keyboard. I mean, it was crazy hard. Children that age, they don't have the manual dexterity. So, I mean, the school systems really had to think about, and they had to adjust on the fly. The first few weeks of slides, it was asking students to do things at a kindergarten, first grade level that they just physically couldn't even do at a computer. But it's amazing. They're learning the skills and learning how to navigate. And now I think, to your point, I fast forward thinking about my son when he enters into the working world, and he's been doing it since kindergarten. It's amazing to think about it. But at the time, the school really had to make adjustments in how they were communicating at all the different levels.
This is really building a part of building a strong workforce, whether it's, employee or employer, owning your business one day, developing these communication skills from a very young age. And so what are ways do you think are necessary or could help to create support for innovative communication practices and education? And some of this is just speaking to what you've said already. The demand is there because the technology is ever evolving. So there's a demand to stay innovative. So how do you think educators can help stay relevant, keep the kids up to speed?
The ways are endless. And we touched on that earlier, how it can be overwhelming. I'll just touch on two. I think for schools, I really would encourage them to look at their demographic. Our school has done a great job. They've hired an equity officer, and they've really tried to drill down and pull together the data of, what are the backgrounds of all of our kiddos, and try to help tailor the communications to those backgrounds. Look to add foreign language translation where you can as an offering, wherever you can. I love that our elementary school principal recently started using a tool. It's called S'more. Her newsletters come out via email once a week, and it's via S'more. And It allows her newsletters to be translated. It allows for the text sizing to be changed. So if you have difficulty reading on a screen, we have some caregivers that are grandparents. It will allow them to enlarge the text. I think just encouraging schools to just look at their different, demographics. Some of your audience, they have disabilities that you're unaware of. It might not be visual. So, for hearing impaired, and again, going back to those that may have trouble reading on screens, think about all these different facets and how you're communicating and how you can get that message to those people the best way so that they can hear what you have to say. And then I would say the second way to really create a supportive kind of communication environment for your children as a caregiver, get involved with the school. I know we're all running a mile a minute, and especially as a caregiver, our time is stretched thin. But going back to, my earlier statement about Laura Vander's, vision on like time is elastic. And if you can prioritize, the communication with your school, the more you share with the school about maybe what's going on at home or what's going on with your kids, establishing that two-way street, admitting, hey, English is my second language. This is the language that I can understand. Like, I hope that people can feel that they can have those conversations with their schools, because I think overall, the partnership is so crucial between educators and homes that, people should feel comfortable just being themselves and standing up for what they need in order to understand what's going on in their kids' school.
Yes. You've highlighted some key values of Elation Communications. Our focus on inclusive communications aligns with your first point of being intentional and cognizant of the needs of your audiences. And oftentimes, that might be focused on disability needs, as well as you're saying, diversity, equity, inclusion, more equitable access to some of the information, particularly if it's, English as a second language. And so inclusive communication is broad and vast. And while the idea is not necessarily as innovative, because so many people are yet to be intentional about it, implementing the practice of it is innovative. So thank you so much for raising that issue. And to your second point, there is no better way other than open, honest, and transparent communication. And, that really helps to identify solutions. And so thank you for all those critical points. So then we want to ask you about, how can effective communication enhance education?
So, making your audience feel connected just allows for that harmony, right? You have to think about, some of the invisible illnesses that are there, diabetes, celiac, kiddos that are dealing with all sorts of, dyslexia, disabilities, intellectual disabilities. You have to take all of this into consideration. And I think when kids feel heard and recognized, they obviously will respond better in the classroom. I think you'll have less interruptions. It helps the teachers, helps the nurses. I think back to that two-way street with, families and caregivers, making sure to communicate with the schools and communicate to their kids about acceptance and how everyone looks different. Like all of this ties together into trying to create this environment where we respect one another, we respect how each other needs and wants to be communicated to. I'll share two specific examples. And one, actually, Jerica, I think you had brought up the use of emojis on one of your discussions on one of your social media channels, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So I was new to my board role, and our president at the time was so amazing and focused on, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, we were having a private text back and forth, and I gave the thumbs up, and he knew how, having a biracial son, I was really trying to create an environment of inclusiveness. And he brought it to my attention. He's like, I think the use of like the yellow thumbs up emoji is offensive to some, Asian Pacific folks. And I had no idea. And, that's like a simple way that we communicate daily with one another. We have no perception at times how we're coming across with it. So I started using, a darker skin tone thumbs up and all the different hand emojis, in solidarity for my son and others, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So it's interesting when we start really drilling down into our communication and even the smallest little nuances. So that's one example that I'll share. Another example, we created we applied and got a grant to have a Copper Beach Travels the World program, which was a multicultural event where we invited families to pull together tables representing different countries and regions. And our PTA had pivoted to just going all digital. We had sent out for years printed flyers for everything. And, we completely went green, no more flyers. Well, for this particular event, I wanted to print letters and flyers, and I wanted to make sure that for our English as a second language community, that they got something in paper form that they can take their time and be able to easily translate. I think that these different mediums of communication, we have to really be thoughtful and think through for every scenario, every event, every audience, what is the best way to communicate that message to enhance education. And then obviously it goes far beyond education.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susanna. Yes, you're right on point about intentionality and being strategic and really thinking about your level of effectiveness, right? Because it's one thing just to communicate, but if you want to communicate and be successful, yes, it matters taking this time to give thought to these various factors. And so thank you so much for coming on our interview today on behalf of the team at Elation Communications. I want to just thank you for your time. As you mentioned, I'm sure you're very busy and you carved out some time to be with us today. We greatly appreciate it and all the thoughts that you shared today. And so we're excited to have this final recording posted to our YouTube channel, which you can find at Elation-Communications. And it will be featured on, again, our new blog called Breakthrough. Breakthrough is a place where you can come and receive relevant tips to transform your communications, and is located again at elationcommunications.com/blog. And so please do come check us out and follow us on social. We're on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter at Jerica Talks, LinkedIn at Elation-Communications, and again, YouTube at Elation Communications. So check us out. And Susanna, we're so glad again that you're here. We hope to bring you back soon. And congratulations to all of the impact you've made so far, and a big warm cheers to all that you will continue to do. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. The pleasure was all mine.